Welcome and hello from Alex, with a story from r/MaliciousCompliance, where a tradesman faces legal threats from a church after leaving an honest review about unpaid renovation work. Coming up next is a story from Massive Discount 845. Church wants to sue me for a review. I am from Germany. We are a very litigious society, so much so that businesses can sue individuals for writing bad reviews. In fact, per German law, it's up to the individual to provide evidence that what they wrote actually happened, or else the individual can be forced to take down the review and pay legal costs to the business. I am a tradesman and did some renovation work for a church in a small town. The church did not pay me. I take 50% upfront, and the church had cheated me out of the second half after I had completed the job. The church only had one other review. I wrote a review stating that I had been cheated by the church. I promptly got a legal letter from the church demanding to take it down unless I wanted to be brought to court. The church could easily argue that they paid me in cash and I would be out of luck according to German law. Okay, I complied with their demand. I took down the review and posted a new one stating that I am a tradesman and the church threatened to sue me for writing a simple review. I also attached the legal letter from the church as an image in the review. Fast forward a few months, I received an angry call from the clergyman. He said my review had caused several tradesmen to either ghost him or ask him for complete payment upfront. He claimed that I had cost them thousands and that I would burn in hell for hindering God's work. I then asked him, "What is your religion's founder's view on honesty, compassion, and forgiveness?" Cue a moment of radio silence, followed by him hanging up the phone. No legal letter yet. Anyhow, I can now substantiate my review. This OP character sounds like a real firecracker. Germany's legal situation regarding reviews seems crazy. The burden of proof being on the reviewer is definitely stacked against the consumer. Getting strong-armed by a church for a bad review is pretty outrageous too. OP's initial takedown of the review seems smart, avoiding a potential legal hassle. But coming back with a new one that highlights the church's intimidation tactic is pure genius. Attaching the legal letter as proof is just the icing on the cake. The clergyman's response is priceless. Threatening hellfire while whining about lost business. Sounds like OP hit a nerve and exposed some hypocrisy. The radio silence after the question about honesty. Perfect. OP not only avoided being bullied but turned the tables completely. This story is a reminder that sometimes the best defense is a good offense. Coming up next is a story from Dangerous Roll 3652. Merry Christmas to you too. I was hired to replace a retiring dispatcher at a local trucking company. He was expected to train me for his job, but over the 3 months before his retirement, he refused to do any training with me. As a result, I created my own dispatching software, which sent updates to all my drivers, connected drivers to the shop, coordinated maintenance schedules, and managed all messaging between my drivers and the office. Once I was on my own, I struggled to build clientele, and many of our customers left because I didn't know they existed. The only feedback I got from the main office was that I was costing them money. I asked for help and it was refused. During this time, the wild trucking industry was taking a hit and work was very hard to find. I tried to contact a load broker, but the office refused to pay for brokerage fees. A year goes by and the software I created is really making a difference. The shop is happy and the drivers feel like they are being heard. But loads are still hard to find. Christmas rolls around, and at the Christmas party I am presented with many gifts. The CEO has some wonderful things to say about me and I leave there feeling pretty good. The very next Monday I am called into the CEO's office and he tells me I am done. It's 2 weeks before Christmas, so they'll pay me to the end of the month, but today is your last day. I lose all my benefits, retirement plan, and health coverage on the spot. Merry Christmas. So I am not feeling great. Cue malicious compliance. Part of my severance is giving them access to all the software I've written. Fine, here you go. However, it doesn't work if you can't access the cloud, and the cloud is on my private email. It's really too bad I had to clean it up. It seems all the data is gone and the software is useless. Oh wow, that's rough. Sounds like OP got thrown in at the deep end with that retiring dispatcher and then hung out to dry by the company. Building your own software to manage everything is seriously impressive, especially under those circumstances. And then a year later to get laid off right before Christmas. Brutal move on the company's part. But OP's revenge is fantastic. Taking back control of the software they clearly underestimated is pure genius, leaving them with a useless program after all the work they put in trying to screw OP over. Delicious. While it might not be the most professional move, there's a certain satisfaction to seeing someone stick it to a company that treated them so poorly. Good on OP for walking away with their head held high. Coming up next is a story from First Responder, and if you like the video so far, don't forget to like the video. It only takes a second and helps me out a lot. Was denied 2 days of paid time off, so I took off a whole month. When I worked corrections, I requested for 2 weeks off. I had been there for years and accrued plenty of paid leave. It was given to me as I had done so months in advance for a personal event. The 2 weeks went by way too quick. I had specifically lined up my 2-week break to lead into my 2 days off at the beginning of the break and at the end so I could maximize my time off. However, during my normal off days, a family emergency came up that was quite serious, so I asked for another 2 days off to handle my situation. I was told by my direct supervisor that there was no way she was approving that, because we are only allowed to use 84 hours of leave in one continuous block. Given our rotating written schedules and 12-hour shifts, this equaled 2 weeks, and she ordered me to come in the next day, or I would receive a write-up. I didn't argue because I knew she was correct, so I showed up that night and reported for my shift, and much to my surprise, my captain had called out sick, so a relief captain came in to fill her shift. I asked him to give me the next day off after my shift was over. He and I had a rapport given the number of years we've worked with each other previously, and so he looked at the schedule and my leave. He said, "You know you've got plenty of leave, right?" "Yes, I know. I just need some of it to handle my business tomorrow." "No, I mean you've got plenty of leave to take, and get roster is filled the next 2 weeks." "Yeah, I just got off a 2-week vacati." I stopped because he winked at me, and it finally clicked. We can only take up to 2 weeks off consecutively. Nothing says we can't take off 2 weeks, come in for, say, an hour, then go home and take off another 2 weeks. So I did, and he signed in the paperwork stating, "It's not my shift." Fuck that bitch. I handled my emergency literally the next day. It turned out to not be as serious as we thought, and then enjoyed another paid 2 weeks off from work. It was great. To add to the bliss, I reported back from work to find out that this captain was fired and replaced for some kind of negligence or something. It was a great month. Wow, that's incredible. Sounds like a crazy situation for this person, but they definitely turned it to their advantage. Good on them for using their knowledge of the rules to get that extra time off. That supervisor sounds like a real stickler, but the captain seems like a legend, winking and helping out a colleague in need. Taking a whole month off in chunks is pretty genius, turning a denied 2-day request into 4 weeks of relaxation. Masterful, and the fact that the rule-crazy supervisor got fired just adds a layer of satisfaction to the whole story. Sometimes things just work out perfectly, especially when you know how to play the system a little. This is a story I'll have to remember. Might come in handy someday if I ever end up in a similar bind. Coming up next is a story from Terioku31. Denied leave on a day with no work, so I'll take them on days I have work. I am a teacher at a small, new school. We currently have 2-year levels, so our teaching schedules are incredibly light. This means every teacher has at least one day where they have no classes, and it's common to take leave on that day. Mine is Friday. I realized we will move to a full schedule next month, and figured I might as well use some excess leave and applied to take Fridays for the rest of the month off. Later, I was told my leave was denied because it's not nice that you get to have multiple long weekends when your colleagues don't, and I responded with, "So you're saying just because my lesson-free day is on a Friday I don't get to take leave even though the science teachers can take every Tuesday off, language teachers take every Thursday, and so on." He kind of waffled around that it doesn't look good and that I still have to consider a homeroom lesson I have Fridays, which is a student-led activity time. I am actually not supposed to do anything, intervene, just be present while students handle everything that someone else will have to cover. I've always gotten my own covers before applying for leave, so HR has never even had to do anything. Anyway, I told him straight up that I don't mind if they want to deny my leave, but to remember that I am there because I want to be, not because I need to be. I told him okay, but just so you know, it was a courtesy on my end to use my leave on days with the least impact. So you're essentially telling me you'd rather me take leave on days I miss actual classes, which I have no qualms doing. He kind of mumbled something and then I thanked him and left. So that Friday I came in, and then the following Monday I called in sick and missed my class. I have about 20 leave days to use over the next about 7 months, not counting school halls, that make up the final year of my contract here, and I plan to use all of them. I've also told them on a separate occasion that there's literally no downside to me whether or not they approve. Deny my leave requests because 80% of the leave I've taken the past 2 years has been unpaid. Because I don't care about the money. Once, they denied a 3-day unpaid leave request and I told a colleague, I can just not show up. What are they gonna do? Not pay me? That's literally what I asked for in the first place, so either way I get what I want. They need me more than I need them. As the sole teacher of the most popular elective subject in the school, it's somewhat niche, so it's not easy to just find a replacement. Not to mention I have both qualifications and experience in my subject's industry, so any replacement they do find is probably going to be not as good. Wow, that sounds like a frustrating situation for Opie. On the one hand, it's completely reasonable to want to use your leave days, especially on a day with no scheduled classes. It's pretty strange that the school would deny leave based on some vague notion of fairness to colleagues who have different schedules. Opie definitely has a point about using leave days with minimal disruption. Forcing them to take leave during actual teaching days seems counterproductive. It sounds like Opie has a good grasp of their leverage here. The in-demand subject and the willingness to be flexible with how they use leave puts the school in a bit of a bind. Personally, I find Opie's approach pretty bold. Calling in sick after being denied leave is a power move for sure. While I wouldn't necessarily recommend burning bridges everywhere you go, it sounds like Opie has a clear plan for using their remaining leave and isn't afraid to take a stand. Here's hoping the school administration comes around and recognizes the value of a happy and empowered teacher. Coming up next is a story from Earnestly Freaky. The city wanted us to get rid of native grass, so we built an urban wetlands. It all goes back to the summer of 2021. I started working as a biologist at an urban farm, planning and constructing polyculture systems to research food production. I developed a plan for noxious weed control and started to construct the systems over the course of 2 years. During this time, we had some back and forth with the city council, who didn't understand the nature of our agriculturally zoned property. After several meetings and lots of work over 2 years, we'd finally made a lot of progress and reached an agreement with the city by the summer of 2023. Part of the agreement was to mow ditches in the small yard of our property's farmhouse. I'll remind you, the property is zoned as agriculture, so we have no obligation to follow residential ordinances. About halfway through the summer, at the end of July, the city came onto our property and mowed our entire native pasture, and what was soon to be an orchard of already planted baby trees. When we talked to them, they noted ordinances against tall grass and state noxious weed laws as a justification, the later of which is ironic because they interrupted our system of invasive plant control by mowing in a time when we should have been spraying bioherbicide. So now, in order to remove all the invasive plants from my property and comply with all the ordinances, none of which have anything to do with water, I have created a massive urban wetlands. It's huge, it's beautiful, it's wet. It's compliant to every law and ordinance. It's mine, and the city mayor who lives next door to my farm can enjoy it just as much as I enjoy it living 5 miles away. So now I have a wetlands to research instead of a prairie, and I love it. Wow, what a roller coaster. Opie definitely had to get creative there. Turning a frustrating situation into a thriving wetlands is pretty impressive. On one hand, it's a shame they had to mow down the native pasture and baby trees. That sounds like a lot of hard work lost. But on the other hand, creating an urban wetlands is fantastic. It sounds like Opie's knowledge of biology came in super handy. Imagine the city council's faces when they see a massive, ordinance-compliant wetland right next door. Maybe it'll even spark some interest in the benefits of native plants and sustainable land management. Plus, wetlands are teeming with life, way cooler than a standard mowed yard, in my opinion. Overall, it seems like Opie turned a frustrating situation into a win for the environment and a learning experience. Not exactly what they planned, but pretty darn cool nonetheless. That wraps up r/MaliciousCompliance. If you enjoyed this content, make sure to visit my Spotify channel. Link is in the description, so you can listen to the best Reddit story while being outside, and remember to hit that subscribe button.